right, welcome back to another episode of CRE, The Unspoken Truth, with me and my dad, Craig. Today, our topic is about running a business, and more specifically, running a business is hard. We're living it every day here with CRE One Source. You've lived it for 20, 30 years now. So if you don't mind, why don't you start with your background? I think a lot of people know about your commercial real estate brokerage career, but I would think less people are aware of your investing career. So do you mind touching a little bit on that?
No, so everybody knows me as a broker, but in 1989, I started investing in startup companies and have been investing since. So today we wake up with a big number of deals that I've done over the last 23 or 24 years and a lot of learnings by owning a business and certainly running and investing in all these other companies. And so it's been quite the journey, not only from my real estate standpoint, but also from an investment standpoint as well.
Yeah. So if you're, co-founders or founders of companies will go to you looking for a check to basically invest in their business. If you are if you're talking to a founder of a business, what would you say to them today to say, hey, this is really what other investors are looking for in maybe it's their business or their background, or how can they make their business more appealing to investors like you?
So I like to say I'm a jockey investor, which means I invest in people first and then the company second. So we look for really quality founders. So it's a big plus for me. So when I look at the founder, I look at him from a couple of standpoints. The first standpoint that I look at the founder from is do they have a niche, or do they know this marketplace very well? And two, have they done this before? Have they been in the business before? It's just an idea. There's such a difference, Charlie, between an idea, and I've had meetings where people are like, hey, you sign this NDA, and then you go into the meeting, and the NDA is they have an idea. It's like there's a whole difference, and I learned it a long time ago, 20 years ago, when I invested in Nutty Buddy. As you know, it's a cup company. We make protective cups for people who play baseball and lacrosse. And Mark Littell, who's the inventor and had a patent on the Nutty Buddy cup, I came in to invest in the company and create a company. And it was a lesson for me back 20 years ago. I think today this is our 20th year in business, and certainly learned a ton of stuff back then about the difference between an idea and a business.
Right. So it's like taking that idea to the next step and working on it, right? There's a lot of books and articles, right? We were familiar with them about taking your idea, working on it on nights, weekends to try to figure out if you really have a business, right?
Yes, the idea of a business is something that you actually have a product that you can sell into the marketplace. An idea is simply that. It's an idea that you thought of, and there's a billion ideas, and there are very few successful companies. The failure rate of startup companies is something like 80% plus in the first 3 or 4 years. And that's the reason for it, because it's very hard to actually take an idea and execute it.
Right. It's really hard. I mean, we're living it every day. And so to stick with our theme here, running a business is hard. I mean, I can just say from my experience, right? Every little part of the business you have to be competent in, right? You have to know as much or more than everyone in that part of the business and be able to speak to it and lead to it and have ideas and push people. And so when you're talking to other founders, what do you hear? What do you talk about? What questions do you ask to try to understand if they really know every part of the business, or if they really just know the one part that maybe they have a background in?
It's a really good question. So let's talk about what is a business, right? The first is the business is actually a product or a service that you can sell into the marketplace. And so that has to be kind of upfront. What are we actually looking at? I was just looking at a business that's actually existing, but most of the time, they're ideas that people have. So have they been able to articulate what that business is. Do they have an MVP, which is a minimum viable product? And then do they have a skill set to be able to take this minimum viable product or idea and actually execute on it? So I have a couple of companies right now, one that's just now, and the money that I funded for them is to actually take the product from design and an MVP to the marketplace. That's the money. And two of those in the last 60, 90 days, they have the product, they're almost done. They just ran out of legway just to even get to the marketplace. And so now they're in the marketplace now trying to figure out, do they have product market fit? There are 100 or 1,000 ways the business will die, and there's only a few successful ways that it will survive. So what I look for in my investor, my founders, is tenacity, the ability to stick through it, the ability to raise additional capital, because additional capital is always needed. And those are key factors to start. In addition to, can they articulate their vision? Can they bring that vision to other team members? Can they sell and hire to it? And that's super hard to do. Super.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be a leader of a company and actually run a company, like I said, you have to be competent and have a skill set in so many different areas. And that requires time, right? So what would you say to someone who's running a business that just doesn't have time or is really stretching themselves thin to the business? And what would your advice be to say when they're trying to balance their personal life, their health, their family, their friends, their business, everything that's important in life?
Yeah, I don't think there's any, when you're starting a startup, there's very little balance. I mean, the balance is, you choose to come to this direction. There's a book called Originals by Adam Grant, and it's great. The first 100 pages is excellent. And so what the idea is in Adam Grant is, everybody thinks that people quit their job and then they go all in, they take their money and their credit cards, and there's certainly some folks who have done that, but the majority of businesses are hobbies or an idea that people work in their spare time while they're still working, and they build their business over 5 to 7 years, kind of tinkering with it, figuring it out, selling it into the marketplace, and then, and only then, do they go kind of start, go and quit their job and then maybe do it full time. That's the majority of businesses. We've been sold a bill of goods in the last 3 or 4 years that lots of people just quit their jobs and go do this, and they're going to go raise money, and there's all kinds of how to get rich quick infomercials out there that do this, and that's simply not the case. The case is, what are you doing? What is great? How do you figure out and then go to the marketplace and kind of do that with very little money, your own time, and do it. And then, and only then, when you start on your own, then you give up everything. You now spent 7 years trying to figure out, then you've got a chance to really go make it happen in the marketplace. And it takes another 3 to 5 years to just see if it happens. These ideas about, like Instagram, that sold for $1 billion within a year, that's one company. Majority don't do that.
Right. And those are the ones that get publicized and everyone sees, right? Are the successes. No one sees, and no one writes articles about the failures, right?
Yes, and 8 out of 10 people fail. And so what we're looking for, one of the reasons why, because we know there's a high failure rate, one of the reasons why we invest in people is because we want to know if the business fails. And one of my 6 habanero venture must have is the investor is all in. I do not invest with partners who, I'm gonna raise money, and $100,000 of this is going to go to my salary, and I'm gonna try and make this work, but you're going to give all your money, Craig, and then if it doesn't work, then I really haven't lost anything, because it was your money I spent. So that's not what I do, and I don't think very many, and certainly in today's market, as we see here, that's not happening. There was a time when maybe you could do that, but not anymore.
Right. So we've talked a lot about like starting companies. Is this true? Everything we've talked about thus far, is that true for non-tech companies as well? Is it the same idea?
It depends. On a service industry, you can start with very little capital. You can build it yourself. What we did, we started Lean Associates in 1991, and that was startup company. There was 8 partners. We threw in some money, other lead partners threw in, and we were able to be financially stable fairly quickly. We were cash flow positive within 90 days or 120 days. So one of the reasons I became a broker was because I didn't have any capital back in the early 80s. And so I wanted to bet on myself. And so I started in the brokerage business because I could have my own business, 100% commission based, and I haven't had a paycheck since 1983. And that is made all the difference because I've taken risks. And so there are still ways today, the brokers that we train at Lean Associates, they don't have any capital to start a business, and after they train with us, they go into the marketplace and kind of do it. So on a service business, you can do that a little bit more easily. It's still not easy because you're still working 80 hours a week. You're still giving up balance. You're still figuring it out for years, not just for a year or 6 months or 2 years.
Right. Do you think, just curious, I don't really know the answer to this question. Do you think most brokers look at their job as really starting and running a business?
Well, I think it's changing now. At Lean Associates, I think that's the case. The bigger companies, now that we are competing with CBRE, JLL, and some of the bigger companies, those folks are creating less of entrepreneurial spirit and more kind of systematic brokers that have large, those are both Fortune 500 companies that have those. And so I don't think they view their world as, they aren't taking the risks that other entrepreneurs are. And so the returns tend to be less. They can be more. There's certainly top brokers at CBRE and JLL making way more than I do, but they tend to be, on an overall basis, the average commission on the smaller companies tend to be higher because you're taking more risk.
Right. And how about, we've talked about starting companies, tech companies, non-tech companies. How about running, right? Something that's already been started and established, but then running something that's, a business that's going to be sustainable. Are the lessons and the skill set, is it the same, or, would you say it's a different skill set?
Running a company, creating, there's so many areas where you can kind of fail at a company, just like there are in brokerage business or any other companies. But there are certain marks where you hit, where you go from, yes, we've proven that this company can sell in the marketplace, now we have to grow. And growing the company is as perilous as just creating the company. So being able to hire 10 people or 11 people like we have at one source is way different than able to scale. I was reading earlier this year, Amazon was hiring 20,000 people a month. And that in its own self is just daunting to me. We've been able to build a fantastic 10 or 11 person team, but to grow that team to 50, which is very hard to do, you have to really rely on your culture and your team, and you have to spread out the ability to do that. And that's where it gets really hard. I really love betting on myself and we are, and you and I, but now we have 10 people and we have to bring them in. And then you grow those 10 to 50, you have to depend that those folks can then mentor and spread out, and then you grow to a 200. And so all along the way, there's lots of ways, and then you see it all the time. Companies do great, and then they run into themselves. We were at lunch today, as you know, and one of these monster companies where, one side of the organization doesn't know what the other side of the organization is doing. They could be spending millions of dollars doing the exact same thing. We don't have that issue at 10 people, but you certainly have it as you grow.
Yeah. And another thing I was just thinking about during our lunch today, someone we had lunch with previously worked at Amazon, and we asked, they're, like you said, hiring 20,000 people a month. Are they able to maintain that culture that is written about and so highly publicized? I mean, I think it's every day is day one is the common, or the famous line that Jeff Bezos talks about. And he said, yeah, they interview and they hire to that skill set or that characteristic, that personality. And so they are focused on it. And I think that's part of why they've been really successful and just blown up over the last couple decades.
It's absolutely impressive. impressive that they've been able to do it. It'd be impressive to see if now that Bezos is retired from Amazon, if they're able to keep that culture and for how long.
Mhm.
But it absolutely is stunning. And one of the reasons why Amazon is one of the top 5 most valuable companies in the world, because he was able to instill that culture, and they do move pretty quickly.
Yeah. And
But
culture, I think in a previous episode, you said the quote, culture eats strategy for lunch every day. And culture is so big. We're finding with Theory One Source, when you're starting a company and ramping up, but I think it's equally, if not more important, when you're trying to grow and scale, right? Because you are, at that point, you're trying to leverage team managers, departments, and really add lots of people. And I think all you can do is rely on culture, right? At that point, you have to rely on what you've instilled and what the culture of the whole group and the company is as a group.
well, culture and training, right? We have to train
Yeah.
and we're always, from my perspective as the CEO of this company, we're trying to say, here's what our culture is, but here's where we want to go with it. We set vision and direction based on, and here's the underlying, here's how we're going to treat people in the organization, and here's our vision where we're going to head. And every single day we have to stay to that course of what that vision is. And behind the scenes, it's not that easy. The vision that we put out to our team and to the marketplace feels like, I think we've done a really good job of kind of saying, here's our direction, but you and I are hashing up, beating it up. And I know you've looked at me over the time and go, wait, why are we visiting this again? We just talked about it a week ago, because we just have to kind of always be testing our what we're doing and where we're headed, because there is no set and forget on any business, much less a startup business, which is always curving, bending, doing something new.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talk about experiments. That's, I know, one of your big things, something I've learned just by working with you over the last, year plus, year and a half. And I know Amazon, I've read, I think they call it something different, but they always talk about experiments and trying new things. And I think that's a huge key to growing, starting, growing, scaling, and sustaining a business, is you always, have to be experimenting new things.
I stole that. That's another Jeff Bezos. The quality of my life is directly proportionate to the amount of experiments that I do on a daily and monthly basis. And that's exactly, that's the quote I use. It's close, but that's exactly what we're looking at. And now, we track experiments. And I don't know what our number is. You tell me.
We've got a long list. I think we're over close to 100 in a year.
Experiments in 14, 15 months.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're tracking it. And the answer is, that's another experiment. So it takes away from, it feels like the right word to use when we're trying things out. It's experiment, as opposed to, I know how to do this, and we don't know how to do it. We have to try it out, and we are iterating all the time on our software, and we're iterating on how we present it to the marketplace, and we're iterating on how we take care of our people.
Yeah. And I think that's important, right? Is to always encourage new ideas, always try new things. And that's through the whole organization. And I think that's part of our culture that we've created, is we want to encourage, we had a session with our whole team. We actually celebrated failed experiments. And the idea obviously was to encourage all of us to continue to try, because from that list of 100 experiments, we have 10, 15, 20 that have been really successful. And so we continue to do those. And that's how you find great things and great ideas and continue to build and grow your business.
It is imperative and it's not just startup. It's not in one source. We are doing experiments at Capola Cheney Group as well. We are, we've been doing this for 37 years. It's the same traditional business, but I have created a culture there. A lot of this culture that we brought over to OneSource, we have tried and failed at it or done well at Capola Cheney. And so we do experiments all the time. We track them. Our numbers way less on the startup. Our numbers more like 10 to 20 a year at Capola Cheney. And here we're doing, 80 to 100, but we are still doing them.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep. All over the business too. I mean, every department, every group. Yep. Yeah, awesome. So running a business is hard, growing a business is hard, scaling a business is hard, sustaining a business is hard. All of this is hard. And a friend of ours, Andrews Warner, right? He's the CEO of a tech company here in town. His quote I think about all the time. He shared with our team at our team summit was, what's the alternative, right? What would you rather be doing than trying to do cool, different, hard things? It's so much better than the alternative, which is maybe a mundane life or a mundane career. And so, yes, it's hard. Yes, we're stressed out, we're anxious, we lose sleep, we're busy, we're saying no to social engagements, whatever it is. But I think for me at least, right, and I would think a lot of business owners have said it's worth it, right?
It's funny because, when we acquired the company, we started really building our team a year ago, 14 months ago. I've done well, so I have some financial resources, and people are like, what the heck are you doing? You're, 61 years old. Why are you doing this? And it's like, this is, I remember talking to Bill Lee, and I said, what's the worst thing about being retired? And he says, I miss the competition. And I didn't want to go away without doing this, and I wanted to take a run at it. And here we are 15 months later having some success, and it's pretty fun, it's pretty exciting. But there's a lot of stress that goes along with it. And there's a lot of learnings that go along with it. I am a way better business owner, manager, advisor today than I was 15 months ago because of buying a CRE OneSource and working on the business as we've grown it.
Yeah. Yeah. Any last thoughts on running a business, or have we covered most of it?
So I think the one thought I would say is, to your point, it's really hard, but it's all worth it. And whether or not you're successful or fail, it's still worth it. The amount of learnings that you get from this is, I was just reading a book and they call it scar tissue. It's like, we want some scar tissue when we are done with this, and you're going to have it. There's no way not to run a business and not have scar tissue. And we've got tons of scar tissue right now, and we're getting more. And so that's what you want in life. You want scar tissue. You don't want to be pristine anymore. So we're looking for people with scar tissue. We hire to that. We want it. We're getting it ourselves.
Yep. Scar tissue. And at the end of the day, right, the downside is you learned a ton, right? You have a way different, way more robust skill set than you began with. You've learned a ton of lessons along the way. You've made great relationships and worked on really hard problems with good people, right? And that's a pretty good downside in my mind.
The idea, my idea, has been since 1983 and 1982 when I was playing professional baseball, or 1983 when I was playing with the Twins. Look, I want to be in the arena. And there are so many. I turn on the TV now and I turn it off immediately because everybody's a talking head. There's sports talking heads, there's political talking heads, there's business talking heads. They're literally, all they're doing is talking about what other people are doing. And that is not, it's like a sitcom on life. No, we're in the middle of it. We are in the arena, and that arena creates battle wounds and scars and bruises and no sleep. And that's what we want. I don't want to be a talking head. I don't want to pay somebody $1 million to give me consulting advice. I want somebody who's literally doing it. And by owning all of these companies through Habanero Ventures, that's what I do. I was just giving a podcast to one of my companies, Rebecca Clyde's company at Bodco, and we were talking about their sales team. They're literally in the arena trying to figure it out, and I'm help coaching their team on what we're doing and how we can do better. And that's where I want to be. I do not want to be a talking head.
Right. Right.
They're everywhere, and they're not worth their dime. I hate it.
Yeah. And you're in the arena with us too, running demos. We are constantly talking about messaging and demo structure and organization, follow-ups, marketing, all of it, right? And we are all running it side by side and learning as we go.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. Another episode of CRE, The Unspoken Truth today. Thank you. And until next time.